Most of the time, of course, it doesn't. Most of the time, the European Court of Human Rights comes in after the event. If the government does something which is held to be lawful by the English courts, that thing is done. And then months or years later, somebody complains to the European Court of Human Rights and says the government has got it wrong, this is contrary to human rights, and so on. What's particularly worrying about what happened this week is that the European Court of Human Rights essentially infiltrated itself into the English legal system. Because what happened, of course, was that the flight was there, it was on the ground, it was about to take off, chocks were away. There was a series of requests to the English courts, going actually right up to a request to the Supreme Court to intervene. They all said, no, we're not going to intervene, we're not going to issue an injunction. Now, normally that would be it. But now we have the European Court coming in under a little-known rule of procedure. You know, for those of you who keep the rules of procedure next to your bed, it's Article 39. For sensible people, they can just remember that. But under this rule of procedure, the court simply issued a so-called recommendation saying, freeze everything here, stop it, and don't continue further. Okay. Now, that effectively is acting as an appeal court from the English courts. That's exactly what the European Court of Human Rights should not do. It's exactly what its defenders say it can't do, and it's exactly what it did.
Yes. Well, Ben, on that point, I mentioned I'm not Mystic Meg, so I didn't predict this being as embarrassing for the government as it actually was. You did predict that this plan would ultimately fail. Why were you so certain?
Well, it was bound to fail on three bases. The first was it was bound to be challenged wholesale by lawyers in the United Kingdom, and I'd like to come back to that. But it was also, and we haven't got to the next two stages, incredibly expensive. And that was before you get any vivid pictures of deportees in Kigali being maltreated, finding their way back into the UK media, and then trying to undermine the policy from that perspective. So it was always, rushing into the headwinds of difficulty. But on the point of this plan being part of British border control, it isn't. This is not a plan to assist with border control. This is a plan that responds to a failure of border control. Because remember, we're trying to deport people to Rwanda. They've already landed on our shores. Our borders have already been breached. The illegal crossing across the channel is what needs to be stopped. We need to take proper control of our borders. And that's not what's happening. So we have this ridiculous picture of border force boats, RNLI, providing a free taxi service. Effectively, once you get into British waters, you're going to be assured, safe passage all the way to the shore at the British taxpayer's expense. And then this plan, this convoluted, expensive, legally flawed plan to get deportees from the United Kingdom to Kigali. And I want out of the ECHR. I want that on the record. I want out of the ECHR. But actually, the European Convention of Human Rights, or the European Court of Human Rights in this context, played very little practical part in defeating the policy. Because by the time chocks were away, actually there were only low single-digit numbers of deportees on the plane. I think I heard one rumor that there was only one deportee on the plane.